Kings, hail, hail, all you lovers of lore and legend, whether student, teacher, parent, teller of tales, or fowler of the flora of the Furies.
The Great Tales is a podcast about myths and legends from both inside and outside the Christian tradition, and we come to you twice a month, live, to talk about these great stories that Christians have been reading and passing on for centuries, and sometimes even longer than that.
Last time on The Great Tales, we discussed one of the most awful stories in human literature, Oedipus the King, the tale of the man foretold by an oracle that he would kill his father and marry his mother in the great play by Sophocles.
That's right, and so today we're going to be continuing Hot Theban Summer. It sure is hot this summer. It sure is Theban this summer, by picking up with Oedipus several years after the events of Oedipus the King.
Yeah, that's right. So Jocasta, Oedipus's mother and wife, is dead from suicide. Oedipus himself is self-blinded. He's been driven from Thebes, wandering in rags with only his daughter Antigone to guide him.
So our scene opens with Oedipus sitting down to take his rest in what seems to be a surprisingly pleasant and paradisical place. One that holds a dark secret.
Before we get to that secret, though.
Just hold on. Before we do, talk about real... I feel like there was a missed naming opportunity for this episode.
Oh, really?
I really feel like we could have done, some kind of Fast and Furious pun.
That's true.
Some kind of, Fury Road pun. There was something in there, but I was too busy working and pilgrimaging to, really... think about it. So anyway, I just want to apologize to everybody out there for the title of the episode, which is fine, I guess.
Wow.
But, it really could have been...
That's a little passive aggressive for a tech.
No, it's me. I'm the one that let everyone down, Father.
I mean, I would think that you were a Pennsylvanian with that level of passive aggressive.
Well,
I may not be really expert.
I may not be Pennsylvanian, but I am very Anglo-Saxon and come from an extremely Anglo-Saxon family. Let's just
there you
say.
go.
So
yes, so you're Pennsylvanian in your heart. Yeah. Before we get to the dark secret of where it is that Oedipus has set himself down, we have some email. Actually, we've been starting to get some really good emails.
By the way, please keep it coming, guys. Really enjoy the emails, even if we don't get to yours super soon. We do read them all, and it's quite gratifying. To know that people are engaging with the show in really thoughtful ways.
Yep. The Great Tales at ancientfaith.com. You can email us. We love to read your emails, and we're going to read a couple of emails on this particular episode. Yeah?
Let's do it. By the way, tonight I'm drinking a little Byzantine coffee, which is a local North Texas Orthodox roaster. They do really, really good work, and they tithe 10% of your whatever you pay for coffee they give to your parish.
Oh, that's so nice.
Not a paid.
This has not been a paid
not a paid promotion or anything. They're just cool people doing cool things.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Let's continue.
Yeah. So okay. Well, we have a couple of emails. We're going to read one here at the beginning, and the other one we're going to leave until the very end. So this first one we have is from Jackson Swain. And Deacon Seraphim, why don't you go ahead and read what Jackson had to say to us?
All right. By the way, Swain, great Anglo-Saxon name.
Oh, yeah.
I am wondering if... so Jackson says, I'm wondering if not just the riddle, but the Sphinx herself acts as a microcosm of the whole story. The Sphinx is a composite of a lion and a woman, but might she also be a composite of Laius and Jocasta? Let me put it this way. The Sphinx is the beast or the stranger whom Oedipus meets on the road and defeats, giving Oedipus the right to become king. Laius is the beast or stranger, though not really, whom Oedipus meets on the road and defeats, which ironically gives him the right to become king as his son and heir. The Sphinx is also the woman who holds a secret from Oedipus, and when this secret is revealed, she leaps to her death. Jocasta is the woman who ironically holds the secret from Oedipus, and when the secret is revealed, she leaps to her death by hanging. So, although the Sphinx is a keeper of secrets, she also ironically acts out the story in the open, as it were, while in the case of Jocasta and Laius, these events are happening in secret, veiled from the central characters.
What do you think about Jackson's theory here?
This is really good, Jackson. I mean, you could at least get a term paper out of this puppy. I mean,
if not some kind of larger, a thesis or something.
Yeah. No, I think this is very good. And something that really struck me. So I was recently, I had to go on a very sudden and unexpected work trip for several days. And I had a bunch of driving to do over the course of all of this. And so I looked on Audible because I said, well, we're talking about the Theban plays. It would be good just to maybe see if Audible has an audio drama for them. And sure enough, they do. It's just, I think it's just the Theban plays. You can look it up on audible.com. It's free to listen to if you already have an Audible subscription. And so each play is about an hour and a half long, and they're done with voice actors. Most of them are like Hollywood actors you would have heard of. Haley Atwell, for instance, is Antigone, and she's, very good, as you would expect. So I was listening to those plays for, basically just a solid day, and I was actually sort of not live tweeting because it was on Twitter, but I was just like sending Father Andrew these no context like quotes and messages throughout the day, having to do with just kind of like my thoughts. Obviously, I've read the plays recently, but listening to them hits a whole different way. So if you can't see them perform, then I just don't know if any, if there was somebody in the DFW area performing this, I would love to go and see it. But if you can't see them performed, at least listening to them kind of played out by different voice actors, or still better, get together around a fire with a few of your close friends and maybe a little bit of wine or a beer, some beers, and let's and like everyone just take a part, which is one of the best ways you can do Shakespeare as well. Everybody just take a part and just like read it. The play really comes to life. The plays really come alive for you in certain ways when you do that. And one of the things that I was really kind of struck by is the way that the Sphinx is repeatedly called the singer. That's the name for the Sphinx in these plays, especially in Oedipus the King, but I think also she's referred to, I think she's mentioned in one of the other plays. I think it might be Oedipus Colonus, but in any case, she's referred to as the singer or as the deadly singer. And it's worth remembering that these plays were themselves sung. They, and in fact, originally tragedy would just be one, or the origin of Greek drama is a chorus and one actor. And then later on, I think it's Aeschylus maybe introduces a second actor, and Sophocles introduces the third. So you actually have a chorus and three actors on stage. I mean, this is like
crazy innovation
stuff, you guys. I mean, because once you do that, you can have it's not just an actor talking to the chorus, or but you actually have kind of multiple directions that the relationships can unfold and the way that tension can play out.
And traditionally, there's masks as well, so that you can have one actor playing multiple roles.
Yes,
they just sort of switch out the mask, and that's a way to let the audience know that that's a different person.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's a very good point. But in any case, and the actors are all singers. Oh, by the way, something fun about the Dionysia, the festival all of these things were acted out at, which I think sometimes we forget, is that at this point in history, these are not professional actors doing this.
Yeah, that's right.
Actors for the Dionysia are chosen by lot from among the people of Athens. So there's like a lottery, and your name would get drawn, and you'd be like, well, I guess you're Oedipus this year. That kind of a like thing, and so it's very interesting, but these parts are sung or they're chanted. And so going back to then the Sphinx, who is the singer or the deadly singer, right? But the thing that she's doing is singing, and she's sort of, the thing that she's guarding is basically the road to Thebes. And so this is something else to say. It's going to become really clear in today's poem, and even more so in Antigone, or in today's play. But the city of Thebes in particular, in Athenian drama, is used to kind of discuss or play with the idea of boundaries and borders. And those are both the borders of the city, but then also like kind of like social boundaries, social borders, taboos, things like this. These are really important kind of fundamental things. This is why these plays have to do with so many, have to do in such deep and fundamental ways with the violation of certain social taboos. Antigone, we were just talking about this before the show started. Antigone is actually the first one of the 3 plays that was written, and it's all about the violation of the unwritten law or the law of the gods concerning burial by one of the laws of men. So Creon passes a law, says you can't bury this certain guy who happens to be one of Oedipus' sons, but it says you can't bury this
Spoilers,
guy.
Man.
Oh well, yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah,
the play's been out for a little while.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. Exactly.
So it's all about it's about the so that's a violation of a taboo. It's the same one that you see, by the way, at the end of the Iliad, right? Is that there's a whole thing because wow, I just had the worst brain fog in the universe. Achilles refuses
some more Byzantine
to allow.
coffee.
Yeah, a little more coffee. I had one of those naps this afternoon. There's like a non-nap, like you lay down. I'm going to close my eyes for 20 minutes, and you wake up feeling like a truck hit you.
Ancient Greeks would know that some kind of god or spirit or daemon had come upon you.
Yes. Well, I've no comment to that except words I don't want to say.
That figures into this play a little bit
internet,
too.
In a recording. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So, but what I was at the end of the Iliad, you've got Achilles who is refusing to allow Hector's body to be buried, and this causes a huge amount of tension, so that even the gods, or you could say especially the gods, because the gods are the ones who care about these kinds of things. The gods are deeply offended because this is an affront to the order of the cosmos. Right, and so like Achilles is going to be killed, the Greeks are going to be destroyed, etc. And so finally, the gods convince Achilles, via his mother, to allow Hector to be buried. But this is the same kind of thing that they're concerned with in Antigone. And the reason for all of this, you could say, I mean, why do these stories surround the city of Thebes? We talked a little bit about the important role that Thebes played as one of the major centers of civilization that collapsed as part of an event which we do not understand very well, but that which we typically call the Bronze Age collapse, which is probably not really one collapse. It's probably a series of major centers of trade and civilization that are collapsing all across the ancient world, basically around the same time. And it seems like only the Egyptians really kind of survive it. Yep. With their civilization more or less intact. And so the Greeks, so the city of Thebes, the city of Troy, these are two, the other major cities of the Argives, they're all affected by the Bronze Age collapse in a certain way. And you could say that coming out of that, on the other side of that, this question of what are the things that if you do them, civilization will end? That's a really important question to deal with, especially when... we've talked a little bit about the life of Sophocles. He lives through the Peloponnesian War. Yeah. And, he writes when he writes Antigone, it's so well received that they make him a general. Obviously, again, those things have a lot to do with each other. Although there is actually a story of him when he was being made a general. Somebody, I think it might have been Pericles, was a little concerned he wouldn't have like the tactical acumen. And Sophocles is like, oh, but let me tell you the story of a time I stole a kiss at a banquet. And this, and he's like, this is how tactical my thinking can be. This is the sort of person you want as a general, right? But he lives a kind of a long and successful life as a general and a politician, which is not always true for generals and politicians in the ancient world, or at any time. But he lives through the Peloponnesian War, which is essentially, initially this time when the city of Athens basically establishes itself as an empire. Everybody likes to think of Athens as the home of democracy, and in a way that's true, but also they were an empire. And basically, if you were not a land-owning male in the city of Athens, you were just under their heel, right? but then they come up against Sparta, and they have this whole war, and it affects a bunch of different places. It affects Sicily. It affects other, kind of the whole Peloponnese. And as a result of that war, Athens pushes beyond its own boundaries, and then collapses. And there's some of it is overextension, as young empires are wont to do. Some of it also has to do with a plague and some other things. But basically, Athens kind of overextends itself, and then ultimately they are completely crushed and destroyed by Sparta, and they are forced into an unconditional surrender, followed by the reign of a succession of rulers called the 30 Tyrants, which, as you can imagine, is it the 30 or the 70? Anyway, it's a bunch of tyrants, and it is not a good time. And that is when a very old Sophocles writes Oedipus at Colonus.
Yeah.
So all of this to say, a sphinx is a creature which poses a riddle. We've talked about last time kind of about the significance of riddling and the relationship to cherubim, but it's the idea of the idea of the boundaries, the intersections, right? The fact that the Sphinx guards the road to Thebes, but then also Oedipus kills his father at the place where 3 roads meet, right? It's just like all these kind of different ideas. So it has to do with intersections. It has to do with boundaries. That's where you meet the monster. In a certain way, you could say that's what the monstrous is the thing that inhabits the boundary, the thing that lives on the edge. And what we're going to see today in this play is Oedipus's final transformation. So this is the last of the Oedipus stories that Sophocles wrote. And in fact, the tradition around this story is that it was only produced posthumously by one of his sons, but that when he was getting quite up there in years, one of his sons and let's say Oedipus doesn't love his sons in this play, or at least he's got a lot of complaints about them. And so it's very interesting that at least a couple of his sons were, in his old age, basically trying to have him declared non-compos mentis, to say he's not competent to manage his affairs anymore, so we should get our inheritance because he's taking a long time to die. And in order to prove that he still had his wits about him, he reads Oedipus at Colonus, which has a lot to say about a father who's very disappointed in some of his sons. So yeah. I didn't want to totally commit the biographical fallacy here, especially for something written so long ago. But
there are some things.
I do think it's kind of an interesting tradition. So anyway, Jackson, I really like your theory here. So stay tuned for the rest of the episode today, because basically what you're going to see is the way that Oedipus is actually transformed into something like the Sphinx as he becomes a daemon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So thanks for that email, Jackson.
Yeah, very insightful.
Wonderfully provocative stuff. So before we begin this play, I just wanted to say a couple things preliminarily, in addition to what you just said, Deacon Seraphim. One is probably a lot of you out there have not read this before, or have not seen it on stage or anything like that. And
it's not the famous one.
Yeah, it's not the most famous one, but it's a fascinating play. And in some ways, actually, I kind of like it better than Oedipus the King, to be honest. But maybe because there's more action, I don't know. But a little bit of tug of war towards the end there. But if you have not read it or you have not seen it, then don't worry. You're basically going to get the story as we go through it today in this episode of the podcast. I do recommend you go out and find it and read it. There's a bunch of copies available for free online. A bunch. Obviously, this is a very, very old text. The translation we're using, as we did last time, is from Robert Fagles. I think is it Penguin Books, I think, that publishes that one. Yeah. So worth getting. You can get all 3 of his Theban plays, of Sophocles' Theban plays, translated by Fagles, as in a single volume. And they read pretty quickly. Like you said, it took about an hour and a half to listen to them. I would say it takes probably 40 minutes, 45 minutes if you're not distracted to read them. Because of course it's a play. There's a lot of back and forth on one page. And so you could read a whole page in 10 seconds sometimes. These are not big paragraphs like in a novel. So so let's dive in. So as we said, there's gonna be a dark secret that's gonna be revealed, this place that they've lit upon here at the beginning of the play. Oedipus and Antigone, they've been wandering a long distance. This is several years, as was mentioned, after the events of Oedipus the king. And Oedipus, of course, is blind, so Antigone is leading him everywhere. And they're tired. They decide to stop and rest. And Oedipus asks this question, which gives us the, I think, very good title for this episode: who will receive the wandering Oedipus today?
It's a good title.
It turns out to be, in some sense, the whole question of what the play is about.
Yes.
I think about these things in Shakespearean terms. It's often, I remember when I was studying Shakespeare as an undergraduate, that it was often said that if you find the sort of geographical center of the play, like in terms of the number of lines, like what is the middle line of the play, often weirdly it is a microcosm of the whole play. And there's all kinds of weird math things you can do in Shakespeare and sort of geometry of the play that's really crazy, actually. The guy was a super genius. But anyway.
Psalms are that way too. Dante's that way.
Yeah. But more on all that in just a second. So they stop at a place. This is not revealed to them yet, but this is a place called Colonus, or in Greek it's actually Kolonos, is how you would pronounce it, which happens to be Sophocles' hometown. This is where he's from.
How about that?
Yeah. It is a village that at this point in history is sort of near Athens. So if you're in Colonus, you can look and you can see the city kind of off in the distance. These days, it's a neighborhood. It's a suburban, not even suburban. It's a neighborhood of Athens, which of course is a much, much bigger city these days. So I wanted to begin by reading the part of the first dialogue between Oedipus and Antigone. And I'll go ahead and read the opening lines of Oedipus, and if you would be his long-suffering, saintly daughter.
I'll do my best Haley Atwell impersonation.
All right, very, very good. Get your. We should get theatrical masks for some of these. We should do that. That'd be fun.
There might be some canon that says we're not allowed to do that.
No, that's true.
I think there actually is. Anyway,
I don't know.
It's all right. Continue.
Okay, so here we go. This is Oedipus. My child of the blind old man, Antigone, where are we now? What land, what city of men? Who will receive the wandering Oedipus today? Not with gifts, but a pittance, it's little I ask, and get still less. But quite enough for me. Acceptance, that is the great lesson suffering teaches. Suffering and the long years, my close companions. Yes, and nobility too, my royal birthright. Child, look, do you see some place to rest? Public grounds or groves reserved for gods? Give me your arm and sit me down. We must find out where we are. We have come to learn from the citizens, strangers from citizens, and carry out their wishes to the end.
Father, old and broken Oedipus, the towers crowning the city, so far as I can see, are still a good way off. But this is holy ground. You can sense it clearly. Why, it's bursting with laurel, olives, grapes, and deep in its heart, listen, nightingales, the rustle of wings. They're breaking into song. Here, bend a knee and sit. It's a rough rock, Father, but then for an old man, you have come a long, hard way from home.
I love the opening of this play. You begin with this good relationship, and she's leading him. I mean, Antigone, we'll talk more about her next time, obviously, but Antigone is, in some ways, she's a kind of pre-Christian figure because of her love, her humility, her long suffering, all of this kind of stuff. You've got none of the kind of classical pagan bravado or any of that sort of stuff. That there sense of oddity, like being the best.
Yeah,
that's not in her at all.
there's a kind of an archetype that you do find in classical paganism in the literature, and also in the this becomes extremely important, probably the most important idea for the Romans. So we'll talk about this when we read the great play, the Aeneid, by the wonderful poet Virgil. And the sort of the interesting thing about Virgil, about Virgil's Aeneas, is how much he cries. You know, how much he cries. He's constantly weeping Aeneas, a man of sorrows, so on and so forth. But the quality that Aeneas has, which for the Romans is actually kind of the most important quality, is the idea of like more important than arete, or like excellence, is pietas, piety.
Yeah, pius Aeneas, the pious or the dutiful Aeneas.
Yeah, which has to do with patriotism, but also has to do with being the kind of person who has the right attitude and is willing to do what is necessary, even when it costs you.
Yeah.
To maintain the right relationship to your family, and the right relationship to your country, and the right relationship to your gods.
Yeah.
And this is a quality which, in the classical world, in the ancient world, Antigone was really strongly identified with. And that'll be even more obvious in her play, obviously, because it's the whole, you know, she becomes basically a martyr for piety in this sense.
Yeah. So she goes on to say, as we all know, that the nearby city is Athens, but she doesn't know the name of the village where they are. And I wanted to point out her lines, especially here, because she notes the place that they've stopped. It's beautiful, like it's a paradise, right? It's laurel, olives, grapes, nightingales, the rustle of wings. They're singing, and this to me is one of the themes that I think is very helpful for us who live in the modern world. There's the notion of place, and what place means has, I think, gotten very obscured in the modern world, right? I mean, here we are talking on the internet. You and I are, I don't know how many miles apart.
2,000.
And this, and this is our world. You know, I've lived now 16 years in the place where I am, and next year I have to leave. And it actually hurts. I mean, I'm going to miss the people, but I'm all like the place. I have a relationship with this place. I walk to my studio. It's just a half a mile from my house. I know these streets. I know everything about my little town. You know, so Antigone points out that this place is beautiful. And of course, Oedipus has said, is there some grove of the gods that we could stop at? Because he has this expectation that a grove of the gods should be a place that's like this. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That there's this connection
and
between divinity and beauty.
The grove of the gods, because it belongs to the gods, is sort of public. The concept in European jurisprudence used to be the idea of the commons, which we don't so much have anymore in this country. But
yeah. So it's I think that, you know, being humans, you can't get away from this, right? Like, why is it that when people step into a cemetery, they tend to get quiet? Why is it that when people step into a traditional church, they tend to get quiet? Especially if it's really beautiful. I remember, as a counterexample to this, and I'm not going to tell this story because I'm trying to be mean, but I think it's illustrative, actually. So off and on, my family has participated in homeschooling, and part of our homeschooling journey has been we participated in co-ops, homeschooling co-ops. And so the co-op that we were in for a long time, it met every couple of weeks on a Wednesday, and they did cooperative learning together. They were, for a while, I mean, most of the people in the co-op were not Orthodox. I think for most of our time in it, we were the only Orthodox ones. But it was explicitly a Christian, and even explicitly a Trinitarian Christian co-op, homeschooling co-op. And the place that a lot of the meetings were held for a while was a Protestant church. It actually did belong to a denomination, but if you walked into it, you might have said, oh, this is a non-denom, because of the way that it looked.
Right, yeah.
Right. And I remember one time we went there for an event, And my kids came in and they immediately just started running, you know. And I said to them, I said, stop, don't run. We're in a church. And one of my kids, I mean, God bless him, he turned at me and he laughed and he thought I was joking. And because, I mean, my kids are cradle Orthodox. That's what a church looks like to them. It looks like an Orthodox church. And it's not, I'm not saying this to say, oh, well, Orthodox are better or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when a place has beauty to it, there is a sense of divinity about it.
Right.
Whether it's the artifice of beauty that's man shaped, you know, or even, you know, just to be out in a beautiful place in nature, in the wilderness. There's a reason why people say things like, I feel like I connect with God out here in the wilderness, whatever. It's because there's a sense that beauty and divinity are connected. And also there's a sense of taboo and of the right kind of behavior that belongs in certain places. And boy, is that one of the big themes of this play.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we read now? There's a dialogue between, so one of the citizens of this area shows up and has a conversation with Oedipus. And so why don't we switch roles this time? I will be citizen, and
Okay.
And you can be our blind hero.
Are you gonna have a Cockney accent?
No, I'm not going to attempt
Okay.
that.
All right.
Okay. So, stop. No more questions. Not till you leave that seat. Get up. It's holy ground. You mustn't walk on it.
What is this ground? What god is worshipped here?
It's untouchable, forbidden. No one lives here. The terrible goddesses hold it for themselves. The daughters of earth, daughters of the darkness.
Who? Tell me their awesome names so that I can pray to them.
The ones who watch the world. The kindly ones, the Eumenides. That's what people call them here. In other places, other names are proper.
Oh, then let them receive their suppliant with kindness. I shall never leave my place in this new land. This is my refuge.
And we're going to skip
me.
ahead a little bit in the play.
Tell
Go
me,
ahead.
what place is this where we have set our feet?
Whatever I know, you'll learn it from me. All that lies before you is hallowed ground. The dread Lord Poseidon holds it in his hands, and another power lifts his torch nearby, the Titan Prometheus. And the spot you're standing on is called the brazen threshold of this earth, the holy bulwark of Athens. And the rich bordering plowlands claim Colonus, that horseman there. And he points to this heroic statue. Their founding father. His name lives on in us. It is our heritage. All his people carry on his name. So that you see is the spirit of the place, old stranger. Not much honored in legends, more in the hearts of us who live here, love it well. So there's references to several different deities. You've got Poseidon, right? The dread Lord Poseidon. Big deal.
Yeah.
Also
big deal
Prometheus.
Yeah.
Prometheus. But then, like, this particular place is sacred to the Furies. Well, he calls them the Eumenides. Eumenides. I know, the kindly ones, right?
Yeah. So
Tell us about the Furies.
Yeah. So when people called them the Eumenides, the kindly ones, the gracious ones, that's like when people in Europe, in old Europe, would call the elves and fairies, they call them the fair folk or the kindly folk or the good people. It's
not the thing. It's not the thing that someone who has torn his trousers.
I knew
would
this was
say.
gonna happen.
You come up and say,
"Oh my
Eumenides,"
and you say,
and then the tailor says,
Euripides. Yeah, I knew this was gonna happen. By the way, I was like, I'm gonna make this stupid joke. Nah, Father will get there before me. I had this little conversation in my head. Yeah, that's the old joke is, some guy in Greece rips his suit and he goes to the tailor and says Eumenides, and the tailor says Euripides. Anyway, okay. Yeah, we just had to go ahead and get that passed. All right,
get that out of your system.
Yeah, so it's
shake it out.
Yeah, when we call them the Eumenides, the kindly ones, the gracious ones, that is kind of somewhere between euphemism and wishful thinking. So,
Yeah.
all right. So everybody knows the story of when the Titan Kronos castrates his father Uranos and throws his tackle
What's
into
left?
the sea. And from that, the goddess Aphrodite is born on the crests of the sea foam.
Yeah.
Well, when this act was committed, the drops of blood which fell to the earth, that is to Gaia, also brought forth children.
Yeah.
And in this case, they brought forth the Furies.
Yeah.
So they're called the Furies. They're called the Dirae in Latin. They're the Irians in Greek, also known as the Eumenides or the gracious ones. They are the embodiment of vengeance, and in particular. So the Iliad says that they are those who take vengeance upon men whosoever breaks an oath. So the thing that is important about them and the fact that this sacred grove where the action of the play happens in relation to them is the fact that they are the ones who enforce limits and boundaries.
Yeah.
And that when you transgress your limits, when you overstep your boundaries, when you don't keep your oaths, and when you break the sort of the system of oaths, servant to master, subject to lord, husband and wife to one another, children to parents, and so on, these kinds of relationships. Again, think about one of the things that the whole Theban cycle is about. What happens when these relationships break down? Why do civilizations fall? So when you break these kinds of relationships, then the Furies are the ones who visit ruin upon you.
Yeah.
The best case scenario is that you live such a boring life that the Furies never have any cause to visit you.
Yeah. They never. So in this play, they don't show up like on stage.
Not as such, no.
Not as such. We haven't discussed this, but I'm just going to throw this out here now. I hope at some point we're going to do the Orestia.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, where they actually do show up on stage. In fact, there's a court case where they are, one of the aggrieved parties.
Yeah, one of the plaintiffs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll definitely do that. That's some really interesting stuff. But like, they're called. Notice that the citizen calls them children of darkness. I think that was the phrase. Yeah. They are chthonic deities, meaning they are associated with the earth. Of course, as you mentioned, they come from this mingling of the blood of
the blood of
Colonus.
The sky.
Yeah, with the
Uranos.
Uranos, sorry.
Yeah.
Uranos of the sky with the earth, right? Uranos with the the earth goddess Gaia. And so there's this idea that they come out of the earth. They are associated with the underworld,
along with the giants.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the Melii, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the
so
nymphs.
They are sort of
trees, yeah.
Hell demons. They're not nice. They are really, really vicious. But the idea is that they are instruments of justice.
Yeah.
Of a certain kind of justice.
Yeah.
And this idea of, we're going to see this more and more throughout the play, but this association with the underground and with death and all of that kind of stuff is a lot of what's going on in this play. Because, the big question is what's going to happen to Oedipus when he dies.
Yeah.
Not just like what happens to me when I die kind of thing that we all ask now. Yeah. No. It's literally, where is his body going to end up? Yeah. Is what this play is about in a lot of ways.
So the Furies live in Erebus, which is to say darkness.
Yeah.
Like the darkest part of the earth, right? They live in Erebus. They are, and their sort of role in various stories, as we're going to see, is that they hear the complaints that are brought by the mortals against, like parents against disobedient children, or guests who were, like violations of the guest-host relationship, things like this, which is another one of those ancient taboos. And you can just think about all the reasons the guest-host relationship would have been important in the ancient world when if you're a traveler on the road, and you don't belong to the place that you're in, there's no protection for you. There's no recourse for you unless people, honor the guest-host relationship. All these different things are really, really important, really, really essential to basically maintaining the order of society.
Yeah.
So keeping all of that in mind is going to be super important to actually understanding the play itself.
Yeah, exactly. So Oedipus, learns where he is, and he sees this as a sign. He's lit upon this this holy ground, right? So he decides when I think it's when everybody else leaves, or at least when the citizen leaves, he's going to go ahead and talk directly to the Furies, which, like, praying to the Furies is kind of weird all by itself. Usually you're trying not to get their attention, I think, is part of what it is. But they are the gods of that place, is what's going on.
Very often people do pray to them, but it's usually when you need their help, when you're the aggrieved party.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't you go ahead, and we've got excerpts. This isn't the whole prayer, but Oedipus decides to address the Furies directly. Right. So why don't you read us
the background to what I'm about to read is that there is yet another prophecy, yet another oracle of Apollo that affects Oedipus's life. Now, we've already talked about...
Leave him alone, Apollo!
Some people just get all the prophecies. I don't know what to tell you.
It's like, which movie is it where all the everyone says "leave us alone," Mel Brooks at one point? You want to feel like you leave us alone, Apollo.
By the way, can I just say that re-listening to Oedipus the King after we had talked about it, I was actually really frustrated at all the things we didn't talk about. Like, one of the things is and this is also in the Orpheus myth. We talked about just a little bit, is that one of the tensions in the background of the Oedipus play seems to be between the old worship of Apollo as oracle and then the new worship of Dionysius as a sort of like, ecstatic, pleasure god, and like the two sort of like different approaches to the mysteries and everything else. And so there's actually this bit that I think it's the chorus says in Oedipus the King, where he's talking about, people, if Apollo doesn't start, helping us out a little bit, people are just going to stop worshiping him. But anyway, okay, so
it's not like this isn't relevant to our own day, wisdom versus pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you queens of terror, faces filled with dread, since yours is the first holy ground where I have sat down to rest in this new land, I beg you, don't be harsh to Apollo, harsh to me. When the god cried out those lifelong prophecies of doom, he spoke of this as well, my promised rest. After hard years weathered, I will reach my goal, he said, my haven, where I find the grounds of the awesome goddesses, and make their home my home. There I will round the last turn in the torment of my life. A blessing to the hosts I live among. Disaster to those who sent me, who drove me out. And he warned me signs of all those things will come, an earthquake, thunder perhaps, or the flashing bolt of Zeus. Now goddesses, just as Apollo's voice foretold, grant my life at least some final passage, some great consummation at the end. Unless, who knows, I am beneath your dignity, slave as I am to the worst relentless pains that ever plagued a man. Come, hear my prayer, you sweet daughters born of primeval darkness. Hear me, city named for mighty Athena, Athens, honored above all cities on the earth. Pity this harried ghost of a man, this Oedipus. Oedipus is no more, the flesh and blood of old.
Harried ghost of a man. Like, that's
Harried
foreshadowing big time.
Yeah.
Time. Yeah. So it's starting to be revealed what the play is about, right? From where we're getting this bit by bit, and he doesn't outright say it, but he almost says it here, really. You know, the end of his life, he believes his end of his life is coming. Yeah. He's looking for a place for a long-term residency, so to speak. So the next thing that happens, and I mean, this is really interesting, but we're skipping over it because in many ways it's kind of a repeat of what went on in the previous play in terms of the basic content. But the locals, again, talk to Oedipus and they have conversation back and forth, and they figure out who he is. And of course, everybody knows who Oedipus is. Everybody knows what his problem is. And so once they figure this out, they're like, oh, this guy is super duper cursed of the gods. Get out of here. Get out, you know. And it's because they don't want his pollution, his curse, coming on them.
Right.
Coming on them. It's this is another big theme in this play. And it's one of the reasons I think that I think this is a good play for the modern world to read, because you won't understand it if you have no sense of an enchanted world, right? This idea of curse and pollution and the value of where you're entombed, holy ground and beauty, like all these things make zero sense if you sort of buy into a kind of a flat materialism where all that we have is atoms bumping around, you know, each other. So, you know, they discover him, they try to run him off. And so Oedipus delivers these lines, essentially to try to kind of make an appeal, like, please don't make me leave. You know, I'm an old man looking for a place to stay. So he says this: don't reject me as you look into the horror of my face, these sockets raked and blind. I come as someone sacred, someone filled with piety and power, bearing a great gift for all your people. And when your ruler comes, whoever is your leader, you will hear it all and know it all. And meanwhile, as we wait together, do not be unjust.
The Athenians have apparently not heard the counsel to beware of Greeks bearing gifts.
Yes. Although, is he that kind of Greek? Isn't the proverb is about the Deni or something like that? Is that, I don't know if he counts as that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So they send for Theseus, and that's Theseus. The Theseus, you know, guys, the Theseus of which you have heard.
Yeah. Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus and the Medusa, right? Isn't she?
Yep. Yeah. Theseus is the sort of the only semi-legendary, you know, hero of Athens. This Bronze Age warlord who ruled over the city-state, who killed all the monsters. He's a culture hero. He's the one who establishes civilization. He's beloved of Athena. He's the one who establishes. He's part of the generation of. So basically, there's the generation of, you know, sort of mythical heroes, and then the generation after that is the generation of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Right. And so it's like, so you have like, at some point, you know, all the people who go on the quest for the Golden Fleece, which I assume at some point we will cover on this podcast, which is sort of like the Avengers Assemble moment for the Greek Bronze Age.
These are all the films that I watched when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like Theseus. Oh, he's the Clash of the Titans guy.
Same, actually. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Clash of the Titans. I never watched the new Clash of the Titans.
No. I mean, listen.
I watched the original one.
You don't need to mess with things that are already perfect. Like, we've already seen the stop motion monsters. Like, CGI will never be more terrifying than that.
I know.
So, like, you may as well just don't mess with.
I know.
Don't mess with the good.
Although, I mean, even though I've not seen the film, I have seen the clip of Liam Neeson turning around and saying,
"Release the Kraken."
Release the Kraken.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool. One of these days, maybe if we do Kraken related stuff, we should read actually what was, when I was a teenager, my favorite poem was The Kraken by Alfred Lord Tennyson, actually. I don't know. There was something about it. I just loved it so much. You know, it was a good monster poem, probably foretelling a lot of my life right there. But yeah, we'll do some 19th century poetry at some point.
Yeah, so
everybody's a classicist back in those days.
That's right. That's right. Well, anyway, so everybody at this point is you've got Theseus and Hercules and Pericles and Jason and like all these guys sort of kicking around all at the same time, doing hero stuff, and basically laying down the stories which, on the other side of the Bronze Age collapse, we will be telling ourselves as we put ourselves back together, we put our civilization back together.
Yeah.
And so here's Theseus. He's that one. He's that guy, the king of Athens. And they sent for him, and he, shows up. And this is a there's a lot of interesting moves actually in this play. Now, I don't know if before Sophocles, I would assume the answer to this is yes, but honestly, I don't know. So maybe somebody else knows and they can tell us. But I don't know if there's a tradition about the resting place of Oedipus being at Athens prior to Sophocles writing this play.
I don't know.
I'd be strongly surprised if there was not.
Yeah.
For reasons that I'll come to, but what Sophocles is doing is like he's putting this in his hometown, right? So you have all of these lines about look how beautiful it is. Actually, look at the olive trees and the grove, and this is and then all the stuff about Athens, the greatest city in the world, etc. Right? Obviously, at this particular point in history, Athens is not the greatest city in the world. Athens lost the Peloponnesian War to Sparta. They've been forced to unconditionally surrender, and they're basically currently occupied by a foreign power. Right? So this is all really important stuff to think about. So it's in the midst of this, you have a play about Oedipus, but then also Theseus, the legendary founder of Athenian civilization, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Oedipus, he asks for them. They send for Theseus. We'll meet him in a little while here, but and Oedipus, he's looking for protection. That's his what he desires. He wants to be protected, not just because he's an old man and elderly people need help, but because that there's people who want to take advantage of him, as we're going to discover. And this is very much linked to what he calls the great gift that he's offering, that he is sacred, right? So there's some really important background info here, which everybody in Sophocles' audience would have known. The tombs of heroes were regarded as sacred places. Now, we think of hero as someone where we all cheer and say, hurrah, like what a great guy, right? He'd look at all these wonderful things, selfless things that he did. That is not what a hero in the ancient Greek world is. A hero in the ancient Greek world is often a super and sometimes insanely violent person. They are extremely dangerous. And so these tombs of heroes, and this might seem weird to us because we think of, you would offer worship to someone that you love and admire and you think is good. But no. They would worship these heroes at their tombs, often by pouring sacrificed blood down into them. Okay? And if you ever have studied actually the history, for instance, of the original Olympic Games from back in the day, there were stories related to these original Olympics that were about the tombs of some of the heroes who were there. Some of them become sacred places like this, right? And there's even one of them that actually is a result, not because some guy was a great hero who won the Olympics and got all the laurels, whatever. No, it was because he engaged in mass murder, and then walks away and his tomb becomes a place of pilgrimage and worship. That is very weird to us as modern people. Heroes are not admirable people in the ancient world. They are dangerous people.
So,
dangerous people.
Let me make a pitch for why it's not all that weird.
Okay.
So,
you gonna say something very depressing now about people who go to the tombs of awful people?
No.
Okay, good. All right.
No. I just want to explain what I always try to do. So what you're saying is really important, which is this is a weird thing to modern people, and you need to like fully understand what you're talking about, what we're talking about, so you get how weird it is, so that you understand how different it is from your experience. And that's when you're talking about the ancient world, that's always step one. Step two is to explain why it's not weird to the people who are doing it.
Okay.
And so that to me is is where I would want to pick up there and try to explain why this is not it's not a weird or a pointless thing. Like why would they have done this, right? So first of all, in the ancient world, I mean, the ancient Greeks were actually racist. And when I say actually racist, what I mean is they believed the people who live in different cities are not descended from common ancestors. They're created by different gods.
Yep.
Right. So Athena makes the Athenians, the men of the city of Thebes. Quite important to understand the symbolism of the city of Thebes. The men of the city of Thebes are made when Cadmus, one of those heroes, right, kills the dragon and then sows the earth with the teeth of the dragon, and they grow up to be, the men of the city of Thebes, or the blood.
This is referenced in this play.
It's referenced, it's referenced in all three of the plays, I think. Like the sons of Cadmus, the children of Cadmus, and so on is a frequent way to refer to the people of the city of Thebes. But so this being said, to have this kind of, let's say, very successfully violent person is only a problem for other people. Right, it's only a problem for things that are outside of your city-state, right? So the police, the city-state, that's the unit that's actually important and that actually matters. And so you don't want to have that violence turn inward on your city-state. You want to have the violence turn outward on what? On the monsters, right? So there's every single one of these great heroes. Why is Oedipus... I mean, a good question actually is, like, what is about Oedipus that's going to allow him to function in this way? It's that he's a monster killer. What is Oedipus and Theseus, what do they have in common? Well, they're both sons of kings, which means ultimately they're descended from the gods. And they're both monster slayers, right? Oedipus killed the Sphinx. This is it's really easy to focus on the terrible, like, killed your father, married your mother stuff. But at the start of Oedipus the King, the thing that Oedipus is the most famous for is the fact that he's the guy who solved the problems. He solved every one of Thebes' problems.
Yeah.
He's the one who killed the monster. He's the one that's ruling over them. He's sorted everything out. He's the one that talks to the gods. He's the one the gods talk to. These are all the things that heroes do.
Yeah.
So the thing that is definitive about what a hero is that he is someone who draws a line around your civilization and says, here's what's in and here's what's out, right? And the monsters on the edge, the sphinxes and the medusae and the minotaur and all these different things, those are the things that are out. They represent the monsters that are beyond the city, right? That what's out in the wilderness, right? All the Amazons and the monsters and all these different things, like as you go deeper and deeper into Europe and so on, right? Those are the monsters that Hercules goes out and tames. He goes out and he takes the belt of the queen of the Amazons, right? And just like all these different things, right? So that's the function of the hero. So when a hero dies, he does not cease being the person who draws a line, who draws a border around what is and is what's in and what's out. And so in this way, he becomes what is known in ancient Greek as a daemon, right? Usually spelled in English Daemon, right? Which is obviously where we get our word demon from. But in this context, it's not a bad thing. It specifically means a territorial spirit, right? The word, the idea of like a divider, right? Sometimes we talk about, devil as like means like the divisive one. But there's two different ways of dividing, and there's one which is which is actually good from the purpose, for the purposes of the civilization or the community it's functioning in, which is to set a boundary between what's outside and what's inside, right? And so Thebes is the place where the boundaries are constantly being transgressed, where people are constantly crossing over the boundaries in relation to piety towards the gods, in relation to relationships towards each other. Oedipus, his life is like obviously like the most dramatic example of this. But one of the main themes of this drama, of this play, is that Oedipus basically says, none of this was my fault, you guys.
Yeah.
And he knows that he's still tainted, like he's still kind of dirty because of what he's done, but this play actually makes a very kind of you could say sophisticated distinction between ritual impurity and guilt, which existed in the ancient world. Super important to understand that if you ever want to read the Old Testament accurately, or the New Testament for that matter. But he makes this distinction between ritual purity and guilt, right? So Oedipus's life is a good example of the way that Thebes functions as this kind of place. And so as part of this, Thebes can't be the place for Oedipus to rest. Why? Because Thebes has transgressed and violated its boundaries, and that is leading to ultimately a situation of civil war in which Oedipus's two sons are going to fight for control of the city, and in the end they're going to kill each other, and neither one of them will get it.
Yeah.
And so if a hero is a person who establishes your borders and therefore protects your city, but it's also kind of like, as long as you continue to A, give the hero his due honor, and B, not transgress beyond the borders that were set for your city. So this is where you got to be very careful about the act of like empire building, for instance, is that you can really anger the genius of your city, or the hero of your place, your titular spirits, right? You can really actually anger them by going beyond the boundaries that they've set for you. So this is how they thought about this in the ancient world. And because Thebes is a place where boundaries are constantly transgressed, Oedipus, as a boundary-setting hero, cannot be buried in his own city.
Yeah. Yeah, but because he is this hero, he's a commodity, and he knows it.
Yeah, it's a hot, yeah.
Yeah, Oedipus is coming to the end of his life. Who's going to get him? This is a big piece of what's going on here, and this is why he's offering himself as a gift to Athens. Like, I'm going to, in death, I'm going to guard your city. That's essentially what he's saying.
Yep. And here,
sacred ward.
Here, even though this is not Lord of Spirits, since it is an Orthodox podcast, we have to say that when somebody will make an argument against traditional Christianity, as for instance Julian the Apostate did, to say that, oh, well, you're just replacing the old gods with Saint so-and-so of such and such a place. Yeah.
That's right.
What's your point?
Because they don't belong there.
Yes,
they don't belong there, and this is what's behind. This is what's behind relics being placed. I mean, there's many cases where Christians would purify pagan temples by putting saints' relics into the place.
Yes,
we'll get to all that at the very end. More but
it's just, all of this just to say that there's this and even if you don't, I don't know, let's say believe in the spiritual reality of what's going on here. Although I would suggest that you, as a Christian, you absolutely should. You can understand how someone might leave their spirit behind, and that spirit continues to function in a metaphorical way to give identity to a people. And then when you transgress beyond the boundaries of that identity, then you as a people, you kind of cease to cohere. So tonight is the eve of the 4th of July. This is a live show, so we're recording this on...
You have to leave out milk and cookies for Captain America, right?
You have to leave out milk and cookies for Captain America, that's right. It's actually, I think you have to leave out like a Budweiser and...
a cheeseburger and apple pie.
Cheeseburger and apple pie, something, whatever So here's the thing. Like, we have America does have titular spirits, absolutely does. When Abraham Lincoln died, they toured his body, his relics, around the country on a train, and eventually interred them in a hugely impressive tomb in Illinois, where there is a what they would have called a herm, which is like a bust of a god that you touch for good luck. Now, in the ancient world, they were very, let's just say, well-endowed busts. You can just look this up on Wikipedia. I'm trying to keep this a family.
Come on, it's a family show, Deacon Seraphim.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how you do well, anyway, it's just like, I always try to make it a family show, but I'm always talking about the Bible or the ancient world, which, their idea of family friendly meant something different, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, but they have a herm, like a bust of Abraham Lincoln that you touch for a blessing, you touch for good luck as you're going into his tomb. I know, I've been there. Yeah, right. Yeah. And so America does actually have titular spirits, and actually conservative people invoke them. Like, we invoke the founding fathers. You could say like the cult of the saints, but you could also just say like it doesn't even have to be Christian. Like, we just invoke them as, these are the heroes. These are the people who set the borders, set the line around what to us it means to be an American. And so whenever you transgress against that, whenever you cross some of the lines that they set or the boundaries that they set, you can say, well, listen, is this what George Washington would have wanted? Is this what Abraham Lincoln would have wanted? When you talk in that way, you're actually very close to what's going on here. They just
absolutely.
They just acknowledge like a spiritual reality, which a lot of us sometimes don't always recognize is going on.
Yeah. So it turns out that this play, unlike the previous one we discussed, has some actual action in it. There's real conflict going on, not just people discovering things and then gouging their eyes out or hanging themselves at the end.
By the way, the description of the eye gouging, I was listening to the audio drama version of it earlier this week. It's so good. Like, that's not the right way to describe it. It's real vivid. I mean, I've read it before, but like, when you're hearing somebody like describing it, and he's like, and he took a pin in each hand, and then he he wouldn't stop gouging his eyes out the whole time he's gouging it. He's like, he's talking, but he won't stop. Oh boy. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I really strongly recommend the audio production, you guys. It's great. It's great.
So yes, it turns out that there's a bit of a war afoot, and so Oedipus has another daughter in addition to Antigone, and her name is Ismene. And your basic rule for understanding Oedipus and his opinions about his children is daughter's good, son's bad. So he's got two of each, and so Ismene, she shows up. And she's going to tell Oedipus now about her brothers. I'm going to give a kind of a modern American pronunciation of these names. Eteocles. It would be something like Eteocles. Yeah. And how would you say this one?
Polynices.
Polynices, yeah.
Yeah, don't.
Polynikes, probably, right, is what it would be in Greek. But Polynices, yeah. So Eteocles and Polynices. So why don't you read what...
We could say it like... we could say it Polynices. Just to be really British about it.
I don't like
Polynices.
that. Polynices, yes.
All right.
So why don't you read what Ismene has to say to her dad?
At first, they were eager to leave the throne to Creon. Creon, by the way, keeping in mind that Antigone is the last written play, Creon is always kind of like he's not just like a mustache twirling villain in the background of everything. He's actually kind of a complex character.
Yeah.
Sophocles wrote him basically as a metaphor for Hitler. As a way oh wait, no, sorry, that's I read a paper in my prep for all of this that was just talking about a recasting of the play in modern times, where they do Antigone, but it's like Creon's slow slide into tyranny is like a metaphor for the Third Reich and everything. And anyway, I sort of like the idea of time travel and stuff. So all right. So at first they were eager to leave the throne to Creon, not to pollute the city any longer. They saw how the blight on the race, ages old, clung to your long-suffering house. But now some god, some sinister twist of mind has gripped them both, some fatal murderous rivalry. They grab for power, the scepter and the crown. Now the younger, like some hot-blooded boy, strips his elder brother Polynices, seizes the throne, and drives him from his homeland. But the exile, a flood of rumors fills our ears. The exiles fled to Argos, ringed in hills. He embraces new kinsmen bound by marriage, and a whole massed army of new friends. Soon, he tells them, Argos in arms will drag the plain of Thebes from glory, or lift its name in praises to the stars.
Yeah. So this is where we get now that there's a clear and present danger in the story. It's no longer just Oedipus trying to fit in on the outskirts of Athens. Now there's something going on in the greater world. And Oedipus responds to this. He essentially contrasts his son's sort of grasping nature with his two daughters, who have always been great to dear old dad.
Actually, I don't know if we have the quote in here, but my favorite thing is when he's complaining about his sons. He's like, they were always too Egyptian as children. I just like they're so Egyptian, and you're like, oh, what do you mean by that, Sophocles? They're like, oh, they're just laying around, eating grapes all day, don't care to do any work.
I know. I love the
like,
cattiness. Between.
So it's like, this is the ancient way of saying somebody was a little too French, I think.
Wow. So, all right. I have titled this next section, Who Wants a Piece of Me? Yes, there you go.
I get what you're doing there. I get it.
Okay. Yeah. So there's another dialogue which reveals that there has been more interaction with the oracle of Apollo, and it comes out. So Ismene brings this news to her dad, and so we're going to just read this next dialogue, and I'll be the daughter this time. I'll be Ismene, and then you can be Oedipus. So here's what she says: Soon, the men of Thebes will want you greatly once you are dead, and even while you're alive, they need you for their welfare, their survival.
What good could anyone get from the likes of me?
They are in your hands, the oracle says. Their power rests in you.
So, when I am nothing, then am I a man?
Yes. The gods are about to raise you to your feet. Till now, they were bent on your destruction.
It cost them little to raise an old man, someone crushed in younger days.
That may be, but Creon, at any rate, make no mistake, he's coming for you. For just this reason. Soon, not late, I warn you.
To do what, my child? Be clearer. Tell me.
To settle you near the fatherland of Thebes. To have you in their power. But you may not set foot within the borders.
What earthly use am I to them, deposited beyond the gates?
Your tomb will curse them if it lacks the proper rites.
Of course. It takes no god from the blue to teach us that.
That's why they want to keep you close at hand. A good, strong ally, not in a land where you can be your own master.
But surely they will shroud my corpse with Theban dust.
No, not with your father's blood on your hands. That's forbidden, father.
Then they will never get me in their clutches. Never.
And then we skip ahead a little bit here.
So, let them send Creon to himself to hunt me down, and whoever else is high and mighty in the city. If you, my friends, you and your champions, the awesome goddesses who guard your people, if you are willing to rise to my defense, you will win a great deliverer for your state, and mortal punishment for my mortal enemies.
I feel like Awesome Goddesses should be the name of a band. What kind of band would it be?
It's a Bare Naked Ladies cover band.
With a kind of goth theme, you know, because obviously they're sort of underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so this now adds the layer that not only will Oedipus's tomb be sacred because of his sort of cursed status, his heroic status, right? But that its location is actively being fought over as part of the war between Eteocles and Polynices. And so this sets up really now the central conflict in play, exactly where's his tomb going to be located and who's going to control it. But note this, they want his body, they want his tomb, but they want to put it outside of Thebes.
Right.
Like you don't really get to come home.
Yeah.
We just want you as a gun pointed at our enemies.
And the shrouding the corpse with dust, we'll get into this a little more in Antigone, but it has to do with the burial rites, where the first thing you do is kind of coat the body that you're preparing for burial. You actually coat it in dust, like you coat it in the earth.
Yeah.
It seems to have maybe kind of a preservative effect. But that's what that's a reference to.
And it seems to be suggesting here that they'll put him out there, but they're not going to actually give him the proper funeral. You know?
Yeah, so this is kind of the issue. Like the ideal thing would be for Oedipus to be taken home and to be buried. Yeah. But they're not going to do that, and they're not going to give him the proper funeral rites. Because Oedipus is ritually unclean in these different ways. Yeah. Obviously this is the major theme of Sophocles' first Theban play, Antigone, right? It's the that this is breaking another taboo. Right, that there are certain very essential things about what it means to be a human being, and one of them is how we care for our dead.
Yeah, big theme here, and as you said, the next play, the theme in the next play.
Yeah, we'll talk more about burial and like how they did it and stuff like that in the.
So while all of this is being pondered, Oedipus is reminded. This was mentioned earlier that he's violated the Furies' grove, and he needs to perform some rites, some ritual actions in order to appease the Furies, right? So the leader of this group of people from Colonus comes to Oedipus and decides to describe to him exactly what the ritual that he needs to do is all about. So why don't you read our leader here, and I'll respond with Oedipus's responses.
By the way, I think this grove or another one also dedicated to the Furies is just below the Areopagus in.
There's a reference to the Areopagus actually in the play.
Yeah. Also quite important since that's where murder trials were conducted.
Also referenced in the play.
Yeah, all of these things. All right, so come, you must appease those spirits now. When you arrived, you trespassed on their ground.
How? With what rights? Teach me, friend.
First, there is a spring that runs forever. Gather libations from it, holy water. See that your hands are clean before you touch it.
And when I collect the water, pure and clear?
There are bowls waiting, work of a master craftsman. Cover the rim and handles at the mouth.
With what? Sprays of leaves, strips of weaving?
Take tufts of wool just cut from a young lamb.
Good. And then what is the last rite I must perform?
Pour out the holy water, stand and face the east.
Do I pour the offerings from the bowls you mentioned?
Yes, pour from all three, but empty out the last.
And what do I fill the third with? Tell me that.
Water, honey, but no wine. Add no wine.
And there, in the shadows, underneath the leaves, once the earth has drunk its fill, what then?
Take up sprays of olive, 3 times 9, and with both hands, hand following hand, lay them there and crown them with this prayer.
The prayer. I must learn the prayer. The greatest thing by far.
Simply this. As we call you, powers of kindness, so from the springs of kindness in your heart, receive your suppliant now and save his life. That is the prayer, your own or someone praying for you, but pray in silence. Do not raise your voice. Then withdraw and never look behind. If you will do all of this, I'd stand beside you, fearing nothing. Otherwise, my friend, I would be terrified for you.
Nice. Yeah. It's really interesting. You get some details of ritual.
Actually, not super common to get this much detail.
No. In fact, this is part of why neo-paganism cannot actually recreate Not that we need to go off on this, but just as a comment, it cannot really recreate ancient pagan religion because we have very little detail of the rituals preserved from those periods. It mostly seems to have either been the texts were lost or they were never written down. They were just something that was passed from, within a priestly class or something like this. But here you have this sort of this cleansing ritual, which is it's interesting. So, Oedipus says, look, I'm in bad shape here. I can't perform these rites. The biggest thing, of course, is he's blind. This is some detailed work for a guy who can't see anything. And so is Many. She volunteers to do it, right? And she goes off for it. And it's interesting to note that she can apparently do this on his behalf.
Yeah.
Because this ritual is about appeasement. It's not about repentance.
Yep.
This is not the same thing. And I think it's really important to understand that repentance is something that is particular to the God of Israel. Within pagan context, there's not repentance. There's appeasement. There's not even really forgiveness. So it's you violated their space. You need to do this to make them happy again. That's what it comes down to. That's pretty clearly what this ritual is for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm really interested in some of the things that are the contents of the the ritual. The fact that you're not allowed to add wine. I would like to know what that means.
Water and honey. I know. I've not read any analyses of the particulars of this ritual. Obviously, with water, there's a sense of cleansing and all this kind of stuff. Although it's interesting that he has to be clean. His hands have to be clean before he does it. And I think the idea is not to foul the holy water is right. What's going on there.
Right.
Yeah. And then the prayer is very simple. Just don't kill me is what it comes down to. Receive your suppliant now and save his life. Because these are dangerous beings and you don't want them mad at you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Again, that's the whole, that's the whole calling them, powers of kindness. Ah, yes. Yeah. The Furies, famously kind.
Exactly. All right. So now we come to the real kind of action heart of the play. Creon is about to show up. And but there's this interesting exchange here between Oedipus and the chorus right before these guys show up. So part of this is the chorus kind of realizing exactly what the deal with Oedipus is. But this also is giving you, like, if for some reason you're not familiar with Oedipus the king, this actually gives you a lot of the basic details of that story. Even more than when Oedipus is just revealed earlier on. This is him actually talking about the specifics of the things that he's done. So I want to just do this little piece of the dialogue because it's kind of, I don't know, funny in a dark way. But this underlines, of course, like what you're talking about, that Thebes is this place of transgression. Thebes is a place where the rules are broken, right?
Yeah.
Where the basic taboos are violated. So why don't you read Oedipus and I'll be the chorus.
Thebes married me to disaster, aka my mom. Thebes bound me fast, so blind, to a bride who was my curse, my ruin, my
mother. I've heard it. I can't believe it. You filled that bed with infamy with your own mother.
I'll tell you, the man I murdered, he'd have murdered me. I'm innocent, pure in the eyes of the law, blind, unknowing. I came to this.
Yeah. So this underlines what it is that Oedipus did, but also that he regards himself as innocent. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's like what Han Solo says over and over again in Star Wars. It's not my fault. Right? But yeah, you get the Oedipal backstory, patricide plus incest. And he's innocent. He's just a victim of all these forces that are beyond his control. So finally, now we meet Theseus. We're not going to read the dialogue for this. It's really interesting. Of course, you should read the play. But we're just going to kind of do a summary of what goes on here between Theseus and Oedipus. So Theseus arrives and he does a deal with Oedipus. So Athens is going to get Oedipus's tomb in exchange for protection for Oedipus while he's still alive, so that he doesn't get dragged off to Thebes by his family. So we also learned from this exchange that when Oedipus, when he wanted to go back to Thebes, because there was a point where he wanted to go, they treated him like a leper. You know, get out because you're polluted, buddy. I mean, it's kind of ironic, this place of pollution, you know. Yeah, but his sons are polluted too because they're the product of incest. This is some of what's being said here. So what exactly is their problem anyway? You know, it's like, look, we're all just polluted here. So they drove him off. But now that he's about to die, now that his body is about to become a powerful ward against enemies, they want him, you know? And so the question is, what's going on? Why are they like this? And there's one point where he says, a god, the voice of a god is forcing them on. Again, it's this notion that everyone's subject to these spiritual forces that are pushing them one way or another, you know? So the deal is done. And then finally Creon shows up. So just as a reminder, who is Creon exactly? Well, he's in charge of Thebes now, again, the once and future king, I guess. He's Jocasta's brother. So that makes him Oedipus's uncle.
And brother-in-law.
And his brother-in-law. Yeah. And he was also the regent of Thebes after Laius was killed. So yeah, he's bound up in all this stuff. So he shows up, and first he tries to be Mr. Nice Guy. You know, let's convince Oedipus. So why don't you read Creon's pitch to Oedipus to come home? Just come home, Oedipus.
There, heaven help me. Is that painful enough, the shame I heap upon you? Well, it mortifies me too, and all our people. But who can hide the appalling facts with you out here on the roads? You can, Oedipus. Now by our father's gods, listen to me. Hide your own disgrace. Consent. Return to Thebes, the house of your fathers. Take friendly leave of Athens. She deserves it. But Thebes has first claim. Respect her well, justly so. Years ago, your city gave you birth. I have to say, that's not a very strong argument.
I know. So skipping ahead a bit, Oedipus has a lot to say in response, as you might imagine. But he says this. First, in the old days, when I was sick to death with the horror of my life, when I lusted to be driven into exile, you refused that favor for all my prayers. But then, when I'd had my fill of rage at last and living on in the old ancestral house seemed sweet, then you were all for cutting, casting me away. These ties of blood you maunder on about meant nothing to you then. And now again, when you see me welcomed well and embraced by this great city and all her sons, again you'd attack me, drag me off and away, your oily language smoothing your brutality. That's a great line there at the end. It's the epitome of unctuousness, as it were. Yeah, so it's kind of like, look, it's always the wrong time. It's always the wrong response. We never match up in our desires. When Oedipus wants, when he wants to be driven out, they're like, no, stay. When he wants to come back home, they're like, get out. And now they want him again. That's what he's saying is like, you're not actually listening to me. You're just trying to take advantage of me. So Creon realizes that persuasion's not going to do the trick. And so he decides a little extortion, a little violence, So to get Oedipus to come back to Thebes, because he can see, Theseus has some soldiers too, so there's obviously a potential conflict here. Creon has his men go after Ismene while she's off doing this purification ritual. Okay, and he tells Oedipus this, we've seized your other daughter, buddy. And then he also, like right there, because Antigone is still there, he has his guys grab Antigone. And then, the men of Athens kind of step in and now there's like, you're not seeing violence on stage, but you're seeing kind of this posturing back and forth, the soldiers kind of pushing back and forth, who's going to get away with this and so forth. And so when Antigone is grabbed by Creon's men, Oedipus says this. Why don't you go ahead and read this?
No, Let the powers of the sacred place permit me. Let me break their sacred silence one more curse. You swine, with my eyes gone, you ripped away the helpless darling of my eyes, my light in the darkness. So may the great God of the sun, the eye of the day, that sees all things, grant you and all your race a life like mine, blind old age at last.
I mean, this is one of just a bunch of curses that Oedipus is going to be throwing out here. I mean, like, yeah, okay, on the one hand, on a human level, you're like, okay, he's mad, and he's going to say the worst possible things he can to these people. But what is he doing? He's actually beginning to function in the way he's going to function after death. You know, he's becoming a kind of weapon against the enemies of Athens already. You know?
Yeah. So this is the thing that's like really significant about what's going on is Oedipus is already beginning to be transformed into a daemon, into the object of a hero cult. By the way, somebody's just sent me this. I was looking at it. So Oedipus did in fact have a tomb, or rather, he had two tombs.
Hey, why not?
Why not? Well, Lazarus had two tombs, but for a totally different reason. My bishop.
Well, I mean, there's
to tell how he's been to both. Well, okay, but here's what's significant. Oedipus had a tomb at Dionysus near Thebes, and then he also had one at Athens in the vicinity of the Areopagus near this grove of the Furies. So there were two people. And there's also a Colonus in Attica that maybe claimed to have one as well. So when Sophocles writes this play, he's saying, this is the Colonus.
Yeah. This
is where the real tomb of this hero, like we're the ones who actually have him. Yeah.
So, you know, Creon decides, look, I'm just going to go for it here. And he's going to lay hold of Oedipus himself. But Theseus and his men, they effectively oppose them, and they, you know, work on rescuing the two girls. And while all of this is going on, there's this interesting exchange between one of the men of Athens and Creon, but Creon actually then addresses Theseus directly. Okay, so I'm going to read the bit from the leader of the men of Athens, and why don't you read what Creon says to Theseus, which actually kind of gives some interesting clues about some of the stuff we've been talking about, right? So the leader of the men of Athens, one of the leaders, says this: "You see what trouble you're in now, stranger? You seem to come from a righteous people, but your actions show you up for what you are."
Not at all. I never thought your city unmanly, son of Aegeus. Not injudicious either, as you suggest, and not when I did what I have done. I simply judge that none of your people could ever be so infatuated with kin of mine as to shelter them against my will, and I knew they'd never harbor a father killer, worse, a creature so corrupt, exposed as the mate, the unholy husband of his own mother. Far better judgment, new as well as you, resides on the Mount of Ares. In the great court that regulates your land, surely you could never suffer a fugitive like him to live with you within your walls, clinging to that belief. I tried to take my prize, nor would I have bothered, but there he was, calling down his withering curses on myself and all my sons. In the face of such attacks, I thought it only right to strike in self-defense.
You kind of see why Creon gets played, you know, as this kind of creepy dude. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that what he's saying here is like, he's like, look, I mean, you want this guy? I never imagined you would want him. I mean, look at him, you know, like he's a super polluted dude. You know, let me just take him back, you know. I grabbed him because like his self-defense, you know. It's pretty funny. But yes, there's that reference to the mount, the judgment on the Mount of Ares, right? This is the Areopagus, Mars Hill. Why is it named after Ares? It's not because Ares was worshipped there. It's because
he was tried.
Ares was tried there in judgment by the gods. And so that's why when St. Paul goes there, it's this place of judgment, a place of discernment, all this kind of thing. And at least according to Sophocles, all of this is happening right in the shadow of the Areopagus. It's all right there, So Oedipus is grateful to Theseus for saving his girls. And so he approaches Theseus to say thank you. And I'm going to read this, what he says to him, which is, again, fits in with one of our major themes. Give me your right hand, my king. Let me touch it. If it's permitted, kiss your face. Wait, what am I saying? You touch me? How could I ask? So wretched a man, stained to the core of his existence, I ask you. Never, I wouldn't let you, even if you were willing. No, the only ones who can share my pain are those who've borne it with me. Theseus, stay where you are and take my thanks and give me your loyal care in time to come, just as you have this very hour. So, this is Oedipus saying, look, I'm cursed, I'm polluted. Yeah, it's natural that he wants, let me shake your hand, buddy. Thank you so much for the thing that you just did for my girls. But he realizes, no, I don't want to pollute you. I can touch my daughters because they're kind of as messed up as I am. And from a pagan point of view, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
We would look at it and say, well, what did they ever do? They're great, actually. Yeah. They're really kind to their father.
They are great.
But that's not, this is not, morality is not an individual thing. Spiritual reality is not an individual thing. You can be cursed beyond, one of the central themes of this play is Oedipus saying, it's not my fault. It's not my fault.
And yet it's very much the idea that his daughter tells him, the gods are about to raise you up. And he's like, well, a little cynically and also fairly, right? He's like, well, easy enough for them to raise somebody up, now that I'm about to die, right?
Yeah. Where were they before?
Yeah, that would have been helpful. That would have been nice, before now. But the point is that the, Oedipus didn't do anything to attract the ire of the gods. This is just his fate. It's just his fate.
That's what he's claiming.
And that same fate is now about to see him, elevated in this way that, he's going to be part of this hero cult, but also a hero cult that is historically was associated with the Furies. By the way, this seems to be the origin. Somebody sent me a research paper, which I'm looking at over here as we talk.
You're just getting papers in email.
It's a live
or whatever.
show. It's happening on the fly, guys.
Amazing.
But the cult of certain chthonic deities, including the Furies, seem to have been were what are called, and in fact this line apparently shows up several times in the Greek, wineless. That wine was not used in their sacrificial rituals, and so Oedipus himself is described as being wineless or without wine. I think it's like nephon oinos, something like that. But that is like being sober, being temperate, without wine. Oedipus is described in this way, and so anyway, according to this research paper, this has got something to do with his association with the cult of the Furies.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because you have this figure who has transgressed all the social boundaries, like basically all of them, all the big ones,
Yeah.
He's transgressed all the social boundaries during his life, but now his hero cult is going to be associated with the goddesses who are in charge of enforcing those same social boundaries. And wine not being a part of their cult seems to have something, this is just my guess now, but it seems to have something to do with the way that wine is a wine which would normally be part of a hero cult, but it's associated with the loss of control. And with all these other things. So
he's going to become kind of the patron daemon of the straight edge.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Which
is a little weird.
Okay, but that's a pretty good analogy though, right? So you can explain what straight edge is to people who didn't grow up in the 90s, but
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
but,
okay,
but
so I mean,
the
the
idea
idea
that you have somebody who's had like such a kind of transgressive life that they swing hard the other way, right?
Yeah. So I mean, straight edge was this idea of, you know, no smoking, no drinking, no drugs, no sex,
but not in a Baptist kind of a way.
No, not in a like purity kind of way. It's much more a kind of rigoristic, hard, judgmental, harsh sort of way, which obviously is very much kind of a furious approach to these things.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about that. I mean, and honestly,
well,
since we're on the subject,
pretty judgmental too.
Yeah.
But no, but this the straight edge.
But it was often very secular. It was often very, very secular.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The straight edge, places I encountered straight edge was in like grunge culture. Like, not that I was ever in grunge culture, obviously.
Well, it's. I mean, let's talk about it.
But yeah,
let's talk about it for a second. I think it's interesting because I mean, I remember it being a thing when I was in middle school and high school, right? So we're talking late '80s, early '90s, and it's interesting because like this narrative is getting repeated again now, 30 something years later, and because like one of the things I think that has been noticed by a number of people, sociologists and so forth, is that there's like promiscuity has been going down, and a lot of it, some of it is driven, of course, just by social isolation. Yes, but also there is a sense of, look at the wreck that causes human lives. I don't want to be stupid like my parents or like my, you know, aunts and uncles or whoever, my older brothers and sisters, that we're seeing amongst a lot of Zoomers. So it's not like a straight edge movement exactly, but there's a sense of like, wait a minute, was there a point to that old morality? Like, did it do something practical, maybe? And what is all of this about? Again, this is about the boundaries. This is about the lines you don't cross, because now most of these people are not thinking because it's going to destroy a civilization, but rather just where it needs to start, which is it's going to destroy my life.
Right.
It's going to destroy my life.
When we're talking about civilizations, we're really just talking about bodies. So there's the body of a people, like a city-state. There's the body of an empire, like the one that we live in. There's a body of a family. There's the body of a parish. There's the body of your body, right? And so you can just think about, there's certain taboos, there's certain things that if you do them, your body will die, right? If there's certain things that are like impure, that if you mix too much of them with your body will die. Same thing. If there's certain things that you do, improper kinds of relationships within your family, if you do those, your family will be catastrophically destroyed, sometimes for multiple generations, right? And that just works all the way out, right? That's what these taboos are for. That's what these social boundaries are for. The big push of the sexual revolution, and especially some of the kind of authors that we associate with postmodernism. I think postmodernism, as in general, it gets a little overused. Although again, this is not Lord of Spirits, and you guys already did some episodes on that. But
this is your chance.
Yeah, no. I mean, I really enjoyed the episodes y'all did. It might have been last year, kind of sorting through like what do we actually mean by modernism versus postmodernism versus etc.
Yeah.
It was actually quite helpful. But some of the authors that we really associate with postmodernism and the sexual revolution have very much to do with this idea that no, all those boundaries, you know what, they're just arbitrary. So you gotta chase what feels good. You gotta do what thou will. That's the sum of the law, right? Like all these kind of different approaches, which are literally satanic in the formal sense. They are literally satanic.
Yep.
Right. And so one of the main things that Sophocles is concerned with, they're at the kind of the end of his own city-state, right, and their independence, and all the things that might have been involved in bringing that about. This is one of the things that he's concerned with.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't think I'd be talking about the whole straight edge thing, man. I'm starting to feel, my age a little bit.
I mean, I grew up. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't chew, don't go with girls that do.
That's right.
That was but it hadn't. Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with being straight edge. It just had to do.
No, it was kind of a Baptist. Yeah. It's not holiness movement adjacent kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but again, I mean, concerned with similar ideas about boundaries and
of course,
and the people and your body. Like the whole straight edge thing is very much about what you do with your body, with your material body.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
there's a lot more I want to say about this.
I know.
At least finish the play.
Yeah, let's we're getting there. We're getting there. So
all right.
Creon has been driven off with his bros, and so Theseus comes to Oedipus and lets him know that he saw this guy. Right. So I'll read Theseus and then you can respond with Oedipus very briefly, this dialogue. A man, they say, not of your own city, but still a kinsman. Out of the blue, he's come and flung himself on Poseidon's altar, a suppliant, where I was sacrificing just before I came.
What's his country? What does he want, sitting, waiting there?
I just know this, that they say he asks for a brief word with you. It shouldn't be much trouble. And of course, it turns out that it's Polynices, right?
It will, in fact, be trouble.
Yes, indeed. And so, Oedipus is like, I ain't talking to that guy. And Antigone, she's like, Dad, like, what can it hurt? Just hear him out. He's your son. And Oedipus, of course, cannot resist Antigone. So he's like, fine, I'll listen to him. And so I'm going to give you the better part of this next exchange, actually, because I think you hurl curses very, very well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And being a priest, I don't want to actually pronounce curses because...
That's right. Yeah, we don't want anyone listening to this to accidentally fall under the ban of a priest.
That's right. That's right. So Polynices comes and he makes his case to his dad. And I've excerpted this a little bit. This isn't the whole thing, but this is what he says. Yes. But why do I come before you now? To kneel at your feet, my father, bearing prayers, my own and the prayers of all my comrades, 7 columns, 7 spearheads closing an iron ring around the plain of Thebes. We beg you now, by these, your children here, by your own life, Father, we all implore you, relent in your crushing rage against me as I march on to discipline my brother, who drove me out, robbed me of my fatherland. If there is any truth at all in the oracles, the side you join, they said, that side will triumph. So now, by the springs, by all the gods of our race, I beg you, listen to me, yield, look at me now, beggar and exile just like you. We both fawn on the world for shelter, you and I, we share the same fate. But he tyrannizes our house, mortifies me so, he lords it now, he mocks us both at once. But if you stand side by side with me and my resolve, Father, with little effort, little time, I'll fling him to the winds. And then I'll take you home and reestablish you in your own house, establish myself as well, once I've thrown the traitor out by force. Stand by me, and that can be my boast. Without you, I am powerless. I can't survive. So that's Polynices' pitch there, a little self-serving at points, huh? Shocking.
It's a little too Egyptian for my taste, this guy.
This could be one of our running gags, Oh, that guy's a little too Egyptian.
Don't want to offend any actual Egyptians watching.
We mean ancient Egypt.
Better than zero chance,
Ancient pagan Egyptians, yeah. So Oedipus, not exactly in a welcoming mood. So he complains. This is long monologue, actually. So he complains that when Polynices was still running Thebes, that he didn't have any time for his dad. And so then he goes to throw out, here's your time to shine, some maledictions like nobody's business.
And so the eyes of fate look down upon you now, but not yet, with the lightning that will strike if those armies are really marching hard on Thebes. By the way, the big climax in 7 against Thebes is that one of the kings that is attacking the city climbs up on the walls of the city and calls out, nobody can strike me down. I dare you, Zeus. Even Zeus couldn't take me down. And that guy immediately gets hit with a lightning bolt. It might have actually been Polynices, now that I'm thinking about it. But in any case, he's one of the people that's in Dante's hell for the sin of blasphemy, like to illustrate the sin of blasphemy.
No.
So
Okay.
anyway, all right. So when he says "not yet with the lightning that will strike if those armies are really marching hard on Thebes," that's the
Yeah, everybody knows.
Everybody already knows the story. Yeah, of seven against Thebes. All right. Impossible. You'll never tear that city down. No, you'll fall first, red with your brother's blood, and he stained with yours, equals, twins in blood. Such were the curses I hurled against you long ago, and now again I call them up to fight beside me. You will learn at last to respect your parents. I'll teach you to heap contempt upon your father because he's blind and bore such ruthless sons. These daughters never did such things, but you and your pious supplications and your throne, my curses have you in their power now. If that justice, declared from the first of time, still shares the throne of Zeus with the everlasting laws, you die. Die and be damned. I spit on you. Out. Your father cuts you off. Corruption, scum of the earth, out! And pack these curses I call down upon your head. Never to win your mother country with your spear, never to return to Argos ringed with hills. Die! Die with your own, by your own blood brother's hand. Die, killing the very man who drove you out. So I curse your life out. I call upon the dark depths of Tartarus brimming hate, where all our fathers lie to hail you home. I cry to the great goddesses of this grove. I cry to the great god War, who planted that terrible hatred in your hearts. Go! With all my curses thundering in your ears. Go and herald them out to every man in Thebes and all your loyal comrades under arms. Cry out that Oedipus has bequeathed these last rites, these royal rites, to both his sons.
Whew. Come on, Dad.
I love the whole, like when it comes right down to it, it's always, now if you were only like your sister.
I mean, he tells him to die 5 times. Yeah. I mean, man, that is rough.
Oof.
Yeah. So, yeah. Antigone tries to convince Polynices to take his army back to Argos. Like, don't march on your brother, man. Our brother. But of course he's not going to listen to her, and he leaves. And yeah, so it sets up some of the action that's going to happen, you know, in some of the plays we're going to
in Seven Against Thebes, which are sorry, it was Capaneus who was struck by lightning.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, all right. Well, this now brings us to the final set of scenes of the play, and so Oedipus, he hears thunder, and you can recall when he has this prayer to the Furies at the beginning. He's like, he thinks that there'll be some sign that's going to let him know when he's going to die. So he hears thunder, and he takes it as a sign from Zeus that his moment is now finally at hand. And so,
do you hear the thunder?
So he says to Theseus, like, lead me off into some hidden place. And he swears him to secrecy. So I'm going to read what Oedipus says. These are his last words, really, in the play. And his last words, right, of his life. So I'll read this. I will reveal it all to you, son of Aegeus, the power that age cannot destroy, the heritage stored up for you and Athens. Soon I will lead you on myself, no hand to lead my way to the place where I must die. Never reveal the spot to mortal man, not even the region, not where it lies hidden. Then it will always form a defense for you, a bulwark stronger than many shields, stronger than the spear of massed allies. But these are great mysteries. eyes. Words must never rouse them from their depths. You will learn them all for yourself once you come to our destination, you alone. I cannot utter them to your people here, nor to my own children. Love them as I do. No, you alone must keep them safe forever. And when you reach the end of your life, reveal them only to your eldest, dearest son. And then let him reveal them to his heir. And so through the generations on forever. Then you will keep your city safe from Thebes, the fighters sprung from the dragon's teeth. So many cities ride roughshod over their neighbors, reckless even if that neighbor lives in peace, for the gods are strong, but slow to see and strike when a man has flung all fear of God to the winds and turned to frenzy. Never risk defeat, Theseus, never divulge what you will learn. Well, you know these things, no need to preach to you. On now, on to our destination. I can feel the God within me urge me on. Onward, we must hesitate no more. Follow me, O my children, come this way. I stand revealed at last. Look, strange new role for me. I am your guide, as you were once your father's. Onward. No, don't touch me. Let me find that sacred grave myself, where the fates will bury Oedipus in this land. This way, come, walk on. This is the way they lead me on. Hermes, the escort of the dead. Persephone, queen of the dead. O light of the sun, no light to me. Once you were mine, I think. Now for the last time I feel you warm my flesh. Now I go to hide the last breath of life in the long house of death. That's pretty awesome.
That slaps, as the kids say.
As the kids say, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you know, this underlines in many ways the way that ancient Greek pagans see their spiritual world. Like he says, he feels the God within him, leading him on. Like he feels there's a spirit pushing him, you know.
Yeah.
And he invokes Hermes, Persephone. You know, note the contrast. Like he's been being led around the whole play.
I mean, that one thing, I think it's
yeah. There's a bit in sort of the stage directions. I don't know if this is in the original, but it's in the Fagles translation. It says that he rises now like with new strength, like he's a changed man.
Yeah.
This last sort of blast of energy at the end of his life, you know. And you know, if you were staging this in a modern theatrical context, probably you would have him like moving up, maybe cresting some kind of thing where he's going to go down the other side and you won't see him disappear, and have light, you know, coming from from the place that he's going, you know, so he becomes sort of transfigured. Yeah, it's wild. This is wild. And I would, if I were the director, I would tell Oedipus, I'd be like, look, okay, this is your big moment now, but I want to see a little wildness in your eyes. I want to see the God in you that's pushing you on. Like, I want people to feel a little afraid of you, that you're being almost animated by this divine.
And that's why spirit. It's got to be played by Brian Blessed.
Yeah, he could do that very, very well. Yeah. All right, I'm on board with that. We should cast our plays, you know.
Yeah, I mean, what we really
is he the voice actor in the version you were listening to?
No, I just really like Brian Blessed. I look for excuses to imaginarily cast him into things. Anything that needs like a really intense like eyes, he's good.
Yeah. You know who else I could think could do this also? A more I don't know, a more sinister Oedipus, but I think it would work, would be Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of these guys, like some of the great actors, who really cut their teeth on, you know, doing theater before they went to Hollywood. I mean, yeah, Anthony Hopkins, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, not that we have a conference, but if we ever had a Great Tales conference, I think trying to stage a play or two would be a pretty rad thing. Like doing that, and then but instead of you know, normally at a conference you have talks and stuff. Yeah. But instead, if we had we staged a couple of plays and we had some live storytelling, that might be pretty cool.
I mean, if you folks in the chat think that that's a good idea, or you folks listening afterwards who,
Just
again,
enough people
the
who
great
do it.
tales at ancientfaith.com, let us know what you think of that idea, actually. I mean, this is not something we had in the script. This is literally just coming extemporaneously from, unless you have it written down somewhere you're not showing me. I know that there's a whole set of secret hidden notes that you don't share with me. Yeah, I think that could be absolutely fascinating. Yep. All right. This is now the very end. You don't get to see Oedipus die. That doesn't happen on stage. You get to see him sort of riding off into the sunset, as we just saw.
Except maybe it's like a storm.
Yeah, it should be a storm because it's, Zeus is letting him know, come on, it's time to go, buddy. So yeah, there's this messenger who saw most of it, and he comes back, and he delivers these lines. So I'm gonna let you read the main bulk of what the messenger says.
You're
So,
kind.
I mean,
really
this
like this section, so that's nice of you.
This is pretty cool. Well, I just read Oedipus.
Yeah.
So it's only fair. But yeah, so the messenger, he first says, "Make no mistake, he's gone. He's left the world forever." And then the leader of the men of Athens, he says, "How? Some stroke of the gods, and free from pain?" And then this is what the messenger says.
Make no mistake, he's gone. He's left the world forever. Yes, there we come to the marvel of it all. You know how he left this spot, of course. You saw him go. No friend to lead the way. He just led us all himself. Now, when he reached the steep descent, the threshold rooted deep in the earth by the great brazen steps, he stopped, pausing at one of the many branching paths there, near the bowl scooped out in the smooth stone where the pact sealed by Theseus and Perithous is cut in stone forever. He took his stand midway between the bowl and the rock of Thoricus, the hollow wild pear and the marble tomb, and sat him down and loosed his filthy rags. Then he called for his daughters, commanding them to bring water from some running spring, water to bathe himself and to pour out the last libations. And they climbed the gentle rise, just in sight of the hill of Demeter, the goddess of new green life, and soon returned with what their father ordered, bathed him in holy water, decked his body out in shining linen, the custom for the dead. But when he was content that all was done, and of all he wanted, nothing more was needed, nothing left to do, all at once Zeus of the underworld thundered from the depths, and the young girls shuddered in horror at the sound. They fell at their father's knees, choked with tears. They couldn't stop beating their breasts, wailing endless. But when he heard their sharp, piercing cry, he flung his arms around them both and said, "My children, this is the day that ends your father's life. All that I was on earth is gone. No longer will you bear the heavy burden of caring for your father. It was hard, I know, my children. But one word alone repays you for the labor of your lives. Love, my children. You had love from me, as from no other man alive, and now you must live without me all your days to come." It was unbearable. Locked in each other's arms, they heaved and sobbed, all three as one. But when they'd made an end of grief, and the long wail rose up no more, a deep silence fell, and suddenly a voice, someone crying out to him, startling, terrifying, the hair on our heads bristled. It was calling for him over and over, echoing all around us now. It was some god. You there, Oedipus, what are we waiting for? You hold us back too long. We must move on, move on." Then Knowing it was the god that called him on, he asked for Theseus, and when our king came up beside him, Oedipus spoke out, "O dear friend, give my children the binding pledge of your right hand, and children, give him yours, and swear that you will never forsake them, not if you can help it. You will do all within your power, your kindness, all that is best for them, now and always." And Theseus, noble man, not giving way to grief, swore to carry out the wishes of his friend. And as soon as he made that pledge, Oedipus reached out at once with his blind hands, feeling for his children, saying, "Oh, my children, now you must be brave, noble in spirit. You must leave this place behind, and never ask to see what law forbids, or hear the secret voices none may hear. Now go, quickly. Only the appointed one, Theseus, let him stand beside me. He must see this mystery. He must witness what will happen now." That was the last time we heard him say, all of us clustering there, as we followed the daughters, sobbing, streaming tears, moving away. We turned in a moment, looked back, and Oedipus. We couldn't see the man. He was gone. Nowhere. And the king alone, shielding his eyes, both hands spread out against his face, as if some terrible wonder flashed before his eyes, and he could not bear to look. And then, quickly, we see him bow and kiss the ground, and stretch his arms to the skies, salute the gods of Olympus and the powers of the earth in one great prayer, binding both together. But by what doom Oedipus died, not a man alive can say. Only Theseus, our king. No blazing bolt of the god took him off. No whirlwind sweeping inland off the seas, not in his last hour. No, it was some escort sent by the gods, or the dark world of the dead, the lightless depths of earth bursting open in kindness to receive him. That man went on his way, I tell you, not with trains of mourners, not with suffering or with sickness, no. If the death of any mortal ever was one, his departure was a marvel. Consider my story of madness if you will. I don't want your belief, not if you think I'm mad.
Again, I mean, like, Sophocles really packing a punch here at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you can totally see how this is like proof that you are of sound mind.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's probably, I mean, I as I was trying to work on the script for this, I was like, oh man, this is going on for over 20 some pages. And I was like, okay, where can I abbreviate things to try to make this fit? But when I came to the speech, I was like, I just can't cut this one up. It just has to play out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff like this that, again, I liked the previous play for sure, but this one I think is I like it even better because there's these.
I mean, yeah,
awesome goddess
ones. I think this one's better. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's. How do I say this? I mean, I think the first one is incredible. Yeah. But I just, you know, there's something about this that speaks to the old man in me, you know.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a denouement. I mean, Antigone and Ismene, they meet Theseus and they ask him, like, where is he buried? Where's his tomb? And he says, like, I can't tell you. So finally they decide to go to Thebes to try to stop the war between their brothers.
Yeah.
And that's how the play ends. And
but they did not stop the war between their brothers.
That's right, exactly.
Are we going to do Antigone next, or are we going to do Seven Against Thebes next?
We're going to do Antigone next.
Okay,
I think I want to stick with Sophocles.
Okay, all right.
I want to stick with Sophocles.
All right.
Just so we have this continuous voice.
Yeah, no, that's me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Let's just let that settle for a little bit, and let's just have a look at the chat.
Yeah,
and
let's
see
just
what
take a look at the chat.
Our friends are saying.
So Rigovich, I don't know if she's from Riga. But she says, as a newly illumined ex-Shakespearean actress, I would fly myself over to the U.S. to be a part of any play you put on.
Hey, come on.
Also to the T-shirt fund. So thanks, Rigovich.
Thank you.
All right. We already have our first actress.
She's donating in pounds sterling, so I'm guessing she must be one of our British listeners. So
yeah, and that's even more in freedom dollars. So
yeah. So like scrolling up here to the top. So Savannah Holler says, she says, so I wasn't able to get on the podcast where you talked about the Swan Queen, and we're trying to figure out what your mascot should be. But while I was trying to join, the lock screen on my computer was a bunch of swans. So it's a sign you have no choice. You have to make the mascot a swan.
I mean, that does seem, typically speaking, omens come in the forms of flights of birds. Right. I didn't know about like screensavers of birds, but you know, I'll just have to check the books on that one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe we should have like a merch designing contest or something like that. And if we find one, you know, a swan.
There is actually an artist who strongly wants to design a mascot for us, and so maybe we'll just have to see if what he's got in the way of swans.
Yeah. Harry Garris points out, I don't know about the Greeks, but the Romans had a god of intersections in their pantheon.
Yeah. So that's like Terminus, right? But who was associated with Mercury or Hermes? Maybe they're the same. Maybe they're just associated in some way. In Greece, they would put up these things called Herms, which I've mentioned already, which are related to the god Hermes, who is, you know, when you're a little kid, you're learning about the Greek gods, and they're kind of like, you know, the Justice League, and so it's like, and he has these powers, and he has these powers, you know, and then Hermes, you'd come to Hermes, and you're like, okay, all right, god of, you know, lightning, you know, head of the gods, god of war, goddess of love, like I get all that, and you come to Hermes and be like, oh yeah, the god of weights and measures and I don't know, commerce and stuff, and you're like, okay, it's kind of hard to make that one map to the Justice League. Although actually the mapping to the Justice League is very simple. Hermes is associated with the Flash.
There you go. Yes,
and then obviously the Flash has a lot of Hermes iconography. And this actually makes a lot of good sense for reasons I will not talk about right now. Because the comic podcast that I do with someone is still coming. One of these days it will. One of these days it will happen. I will read comics and talk to people about them.
Did you know that our mutual friend, Father Stephen DeYoung, once had a podcast that he did with another Orthodox priest, in which was titled "Geek and Ye Shall Find."
Oh, that's good.
And it is exactly what you might think it's about.
Yeah.
And they would talk comics, there was nothing religious about it at all. Actually,
yeah, I used to collect.
I don't know that it's even out
there. And actually, like I would go to like estate sales and get comics and hunt through them and find valuable ones and sell them on eBay. And it's like a whole hobby of mine. But in any case, so the thing with Hermes is that Hermes is associated with he's associated with language. He's the messenger of the gods. But before he's the messenger of the gods, he really is this boundary figure, or this sort of boundary enforcing figure, and that's why he's got an association with trade, because you could say like war is one way to interact with the outside world, but commerce is another.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, you know, and but I mean, he's also a psychopomp, all these different things. He occupies a transitional space. So they have these herms, which would be like busts of the deity, which would, as I mentioned, often be very well endowed. And you can just look them up on Wikipedia. But yes, I mean, all of that has to do with the symbolism of like a boundary spirit.
Of course.
Even the sort of sexual aspects of it have to do with it. But
yeah. So Savannah has a really interesting question. She says, is there a significance in the femaleness of the Sphinx in Oedipus. As far as I remember, not all Sphinxes are female, but maybe I'm misremembering. What do you think? I mean, she is again this boundary spirit, and there's a sense in which you have to beguile her, you have to win her by the riddle, and then her power goes away, right? And I think, I mean, you know, how do I put this? I think there's a certain bit of like, what is the relationship between men and women, and how does that work going on there? You know, like he wants entrance into the city.
Only a woman can ask a question like this. Yeah.
Well, and also like he wants entrance, and so he has to, in some sense, defeat her. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I think that might be part of what's going on here.
Yeah.
And certainly, you know, having defeated her, then he goes on to lots more boundary crossing, of course, as we know.
As far as I know, the Sphinx is always feminine in Greek practice, whereas there is in Egypt. They also had a royal Sphinx, which would have been a man who was assumed the form of a lion. But in Greek mythology, it's always feminine.
Yeah. Where is it? Sam was saying, Sam Cooke made reference to reading Oedipus the King in high school, and he said he saw Antigone live when he was an undergrad. So, I mean, good for you, man. But then he says he's had no previous exposure to this play, to Oedipus at Colonus.
Cool. Wow.
So I'm glad we could introduce you to it. And I don't know. I hope you guys found this really fascinating. I mean, I was rereading. I'm like, wow, man, this play is really fascinating. I mean, especially at the end, like a great payoff at the end.
The thing is that the reason that we're talking about this thousands of years, you know, more than 1,000 years after it was written, right?
More than 2,000 years after it's written.
Yeah, well, that's what I just meant, like thousands, you know, like multiple, more than 1,000 years. Is that it holds up, man. Like this is just, it's so good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Scrolling a little bit further on, Evan Frost, which I have to tell you, Evan, we don't know each other. That is a great name, sir.
Solid name.
Evan Frost. Yeah. You should be the title that could be the title of a novel.
Or just like a hard-boiled private detective. I don't know. Like Evan, I mean, no offense, Evan, but like it's probably not a good private detective name. I worked with somebody this last week in my day job named Patrick Justice.
Nice.
And I was like, why are you in this? Why are you not like a private detective somewhere?
Do you know that in the Anglican Communion, and this is true. In the Anglican Communion, he's now retired, but there was the Archbishop of Accra in Ghana was Archbishop Justice, and that is his first name. Is not Justice like Justus, right? Justice as in justice.
Yeah.
You know, and two other fun facts about him. Archbishop Justice Akrofi, he was the first of the African bishops to break communion with the Episcopal Church USA.
Oh, there you go.
So,
I mean, Bishop Justice would be a great. I would read that comic.
And his college roommate was my uncle, and so one of my cousins has Justice as his middle name.
What the
so
heck?
He can literally say my middle name.
My middle name is Justice. Oh, that's so good. That's great.
Absolutely true. I doubt any of my relatives are listening to this, but it's
sorry,
true.
Evan. We just went off on a tangent. And we've been doing this podcast
But Evan was saying he thinks that your suggestions for a Great Tales conference is a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, I do have in my mind, really seriously, maybe we'll do it as part of Great Tales. Maybe we'll do it with Symbolic World. Maybe it'll be some kind of a collaboration.
Yeah.
I have in my mind a thing I would like to do where we get a bunch of people together at like the ruins of an old monastery, and we just tell stories. And it's like a not an academic conference, but actually like doing the real thing. You know, like a lot of academics work is just talking about the things.
Yeah.
And I really felt in my life a need lately, especially to not just like let's do more than talk about this stuff, guys. Let's tell the stories. So
yeah. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and wrap up to our very ending bits? Okay. Maybe this is the lightning round. I just want to ask a couple quick questions. Like, so do you think Oedipus really is a plaything of the gods? Is he?
Yes.
Is he guilty in any way? I mean, he says he's innocent.
I think that he's is he guilty in any way? I mean, by the standards of his own time, I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, by his own lights, you could say, I don't think so. But I do think he's that little encounter on the road, you know, with Laius. With
his dad.
I don't think he's at least the way it's portrayed in the first play. He's not as guiltless in that as he seems to say he is later on in life.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that kind of the and this, I mean, this obviously this is where the tragedy comes in, is that you can't run from your fate. But also he did try to run from his fate.
Yeah.
You know, if he just stayed in Corinth, none of this stuff would have happened. Yeah. And so in that sense, he's got a little bit of culpability there, but I think he is certainly a plaything of the gods, in the sense, like, plaything is not the right way to put it.
Okay.
But it's more like there's been a fate decreed for him, and the fate is kind of all these things, right? And his tragedy is that he gets told what it is ahead of time, right? And because of that, I mean, it's really interesting. This is happening against the backdrop of the introduction of the cult of Asclepius to Athens, the introduction of the cult of Dionysius to Athens, you know, kind of where you have like the older kind of Delphic, Orphic religion in the background, right? And so it's like, are you going to Apollo or are you going to Dionysius? And are you know, it's interesting that Oedipus is the sober man. He's the man without wine. I've been thinking about the wine thing some more as we've been talking, but it's interesting that he's the one without the wine, right? You know, which is the you know, not the ecstatic cult of Dionysius, but rather the kind of like he's the sort of the Delphic religion personified. And so part of the Delphic religion is this like inquiring into oracles, but then basically what happens is, if you inquire into the future, you make yourself and the people around you subject to fate in a certain way. You kind of place yourselves under it. Yeah. And so in that sense, Orpheus is not, I wouldn't say the plaything of the gods, but I would say he's completely bound by his fate. And
Oedipus, yeah.
At the end of his life, Oedipus, at the end of his life, he has a turn for the good. But it's as he himself acknowledges, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, thanks a lot right at the end of my life. He didn't do anything to merit the turn either. Like, he didn't do anything to merit the bad things that happened to him, but he also didn't do anything to merit the good things that happened to him. The idea is, you know, this is just kind of the way the world is, man. And there's some of that idea that carries even into Christian thinking later on. If you think about something like Boethius's Constellation of Philosophy, where you know, you have the idea of the Wheel of Fortune, not the game show, but the you know, the original philosophical concept, the idea that you have your ups and downs in this life. And as a Christian, what you're supposed to take away from that, I mean, there are these very kind of weird Orthodox icons that incorporate the zodiac and a bunch of other things that basically show the Wheel of Fortune as the hours of the day, like as a clock, right? And then also as the circle of the year as a zodiac. But the point of it is that in your life, sometimes really good things happen to you and sometimes really bad things happen to you. And if you go through life the way that I was taught growing up, which is to try to assign like a meaning to every single thing that's happening to you. And it's like, oh, this bad thing is happening to me. I must have upset God by violating one of his principles. And, oh, this good thing is happening to me. God must really like me and bless me because I'm such a great person. Sometimes it's not like that. And in fact, kind of what we said, collectively as Christians in the ancient world was actually, you have ups and downs, and God has ordained both basically for your salvation. And sometimes, you are being punished for something, or you are being rewarded for something, but also just like a lot of things just seem to happen. And the point of them just happening is so that you don't become attached to this world, which is fleeting.
Yeah.
But that you set your mind on the Jerusalem that is above.
One of our commenters mentioned a couple times the book of Job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's notable. Like, this is obviously not a Christian play.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just not. And I think actually the beauty and the power and the glory and the great gift that is our Christian faith in many ways stand out very powerfully when we look at these sources like this and see what their fatalistic view of the world is.
Yep.
Like, what is the difference between Job and Oedipus? Both have terrible things happen to them. With Oedipus, with Job, it's straightforward. The devil is afflicting him, right? With Oedipus, there's all these complications about his own agency and whatever.
But also with Job, there's the fact that what is happening is something God is allowing ultimately actually for Job's salvation.
And really the question from a Christian point of view is not why is this thing happening to me, but rather what am I going to do in the midst of it?
Yeah.
Right. And by Christian standards, Oedipus absolutely fails. Absolutely fails. I mean, what does he do with people who are treating him badly? He curses them from the depths of Tartarus. Right. I mean, this is, the Christian teaching is bless those who curse you.
Right.
Love those who hate you. Right. Do good to those who harm you. That's the Christian ethic. And there's nothing like that in the pagan world. It's not that way. I mean, the closest you get in this is Antigone, particularly, and Ismene maybe secondarily. The daughters are good. They're basically good, loving, caring daughters. We'll see a lot more about Antigone next time. But yeah. So Job, on the other hand, Job, he never curses God. He says, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." That's faithfulness. That's the real deal.
Yeah.
He's pouring out sacrifices for his children in case they ever maybe have cursed God in their hearts, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's interesting. I mentioned earlier that this ritual that needs to be done in the play is for appeasement, not for repentance. And I said that repentance is a Christian thing in particular. It's obviously throughout the whole scriptures. I mean, to me, the Old Testament is a Christian book as well. That's what I mean by this. Repentance is the gift from God to change, to make things, to make yourself better.
Yeah.
Right. This is not a possibility in the pagan context. All you have is appeasement. And so there is no opportunity.
The whole point. You can't escape from your fate, right?
You can't. Right.
Yeah.
You can't change. You can't. Yeah. Oedipus, there's no possibility for repentance in his story. That's just not there. It's not within this worldview at all. Repentance is not a thing. Our culture is so deeply affected by Christianity that repentance, forgiveness, these things are built into the way that we think about our culture. But we need to, part of the beauty of looking at some of these ancient pagan texts is to see what a gift that is and what a astonishing revolution in spiritual terms that is. So I thought for the final thing that we would mention, and I think maybe we could just read this. We probably don't need to discuss it because it's just so beautifully expressed.
Yeah, it's really nice.
We have an email from one of our listeners, Dr. Nico Tatalius,
who we
mentioned Dr. Nico
last episode, I think.
Yeah, I think we had a bit from him from the same email actually, but we saved most of it for this one. Dr. Nico is my neighbor, actually. He lives here in Lehigh Valley with me. He is, in fact, my doctor, but he's also a listener to Ancient Faith Radio, and in fact, he's the writer in a newish podcast called Magna Stories, actually. So he is a writer of fiction himself. So everybody should check that out if they get a chance. But yeah, so Dr. Nico wrote in about Oedipus and about Yeah, burial and all this kind of stuff. So why don't you read the first one that first thing that he sent us, and I'll read the second part.
All right. As you were discussing how the sins of Oedipus defile and bring sickness to the land of Thebes, I couldn't help but think that our Lord allowed not only the presence and preaching of many of his apostles in the area, but also for one of his greatest healers, St. Luke the Evangelist, the beloved physician, to suffer, be martyred, and to be buried in the ancient cemetery of Thebes. His wonder-working tomb and a portion of his relics still grace his ancient church there. Even more notably, in ancient times, there was a wondrous eye salve that collected on his grave that helped work many miracles, but especially to cure blindness. Think, of course, of the blindness of Oedipus. I really like this, by the way. I
didn't know this. I didn't know this.
St. Luke is probably, for a weird reason, which I will not go into here, that has to do with something we should talk about on the Areopagus, a different podcast, was probably one of the first saints in the Bible that I really closely identified with. And I still really love him and ask his prayers. He's really wonderful in a lot of ways. Let me just put it this way. If there's anybody in the scriptures who I feel like our personalities are close, in certain ways, it's St. Luke. So anyway, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the second part of what Dr. Nico had to send us. He says, as you were speaking of the myth of Orpheus in a previous episode, I couldn't help but think about the island of Lesbos, where my grandfather was from. As you're probably aware, the legend goes that the head of that famous poet floated all the way to the island of Lesbos, where an ancient shrine was built in his honor.
Yeah, I think we covered this in our episode on him, yeah.
And where many other pagan poets were inspired, for instance, Sappho. But possibly to heal from this music and poetry inspired by the evil passions and the demons, the Lord allowed, by chance, for this place to become the tomb for one of his greatest poets, St. Andrew of Crete.
The man himself.
A text here about St. Andrew. He was traveling by boat to Constantinople and suddenly sickened. Before dying, Andrew asked where he was, and when he was told they were at the harbor of Eresos on the west side of the island of Lesbos, he said, "It is here that I must give my soul to God." And he immediately reposed, though there is one tradition that says he survived for a short while in Eresos, and there he composed his famous great canon. Dr. Nico goes on to say, as such, I find it such beautiful providence that the Lord planted the grave of one of his greatest poets, hymnographers, and teachers of repentance a mere few miles away from a major place of demon worship and debauchery. In any case, as you go forward, I would especially love to hear about your insights about how our Lord simultaneously fulfills, but also inverts and heals all of the dreams of our shared past.
I mean, this just carries forward. By the way, Harry Garrett has astutely pointed out that tomorrow is St. Andrew of Crete's feast day.
Yes, it is.
Which is correct.
It is.
So this just carries on with the theme, of the thesis, which I've been kind of developing as we've been doing this podcast and been thinking about a long time before this. And that is that the liturgical tradition of the Orthodox Church is the logical conclusion of the great inheritance of the Western tradition, which we have received, passing through the death, burial, and resurrection of our Lord, God, and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so the great canon is one of the great works of poetry that's ever been written, right? And it's this incredible application of the idiom and the artistry of the best of Greek poetry applied to the scriptures. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely love this. All I can say to this, Dr. Nikos, is many such cases. Many such cases.
Yeah. I don't know. I was, as I read that email, I was like, oh man, that's good. So good. So good. Well, I think that this was a tour de force.
Well, it was definitely 2.5 hours. So
Indeed.
oh my goodness. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in today as we looked at the end of the story of Oedipus himself. If you were edified by this conversation, please like, subscribe, share, review, click the bell, all that stuff. This show's home is on YouTube, but we are also on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and any other place fine podcasts are sold.
Yeah, don't just subscribe. Click the little bell so that you get notified.
You get a little notification when
every time we put out a new episode. Yeah. And when you do that, it helps other people to become aware of this
get podcast. To see it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we do air shows twice a month. We're actually, for those of you listening live, we're going to have another show next week. But then we're going to be off for a few weeks because of some travel.
Next week on a Woden's Day.
Ooh. So our next episode, even though Oedipus himself is now dead, we're going to continue the hot Theban summer with Antigone.
Farewell. May you trace the silhouette of virtue in everything that you read.
This has been a listener and viewer-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.